Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press on with a powerful operation in Gaza's Rafah, even as calls mounted for him to hold off sending troops into the territory's overcrowded city. Netanyahu has insisted Hamas battalions must be eliminated in the city. This, as Egyptian and Qatari mediators in Cairo are hoping to secure a ceasefire that would see more of the roughly 130 hostages still in Gaza released in another swap. A Hamas source told news agency AFP a team was headed to Cairo to meet Egyptian and Qatari mediators a day after Israeli negotiators held talks with the mediators. CIA Director William Burns had joined Tuesday's talks with David Barnea, head of Israel's Mossad intelligence service, which Egyptian media said had been mostly positive. US National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby called the negotiations constructive and moving in the right direction. Netanyahu said Israel would push for the release of hostages through strong military pressure and very firm negotiations. He said, and I quote, "I insist that Hamas drop their delusional demands, and when they drop these demands, we can move forward." The United States rebuked Israel for demolishing the home of a Palestinian activist in East Jerusalem, saying its ally was damaging its own standing. In Washington, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the United States condemned the demolition and would encourage Israel not to target other homes.
We condemn the demolition of Fakhri Abu Diab's home. He is a community leader in East Jerusalem. We believe that demolition not only obviously damages his home and his family and the lives that they have built there, but the entire community who live in fear that their homes may be next. This has been their family home for generations. Part of the structure dates back to before 1967. He has been an outspoken community leader, including against demolitions, and now his family has been displaced.
Joe Biden has shielded Palestinians in the United States from deportation for 18 months. The US president faces growing anger over his support for Israel's Gaza offensive in an election year. Biden signed an order saying the Palestinians should not be deported in light of the ongoing conflict and humanitarian needs on the ground in the Gaza Strip. Well, for more on this, we were earlier joined by our correspondent Jodie Cohen. Jodie, what can you tell us about the latest on the hostage release talks that are continuing today?
So on Thursday, Hamas is attending the Cairo talks for a hostage release deal and pause in the fighting. Israel sent a delegation on Tuesday to listen, and that was after Hamas set out their demands, including calling for the release of hundreds of Palestinian security prisoners serving time for murder. Now, the United States has said that a number of Hamas demands are obvious non-starters. Prime Minister Netanyahu has called them delusional and said that strong military pressure and negotiations will be key to freeing the 134 remaining hostages, many of whom are said to be being held in Rafah. And he said that the operation in Rafah would take place once Gazan civilians have been evacuated from there. Meanwhile, 100 representatives of the hostage families filed a war crimes case against Hamas at the International Criminal Court, calling for the arrest of Hamas leaders on charges of kidnapping, sexual violence and torture.
And what can you tell us about what's being said in response to the reported investigation by the US into Israeli actions?
The US is reportedly investigating Israeli actions in Gaza and the alleged use of white phosphorus in Lebanon. Now, Israel says it abides by international law, that there was a ceasefire on the 6th of October, and that was broken by Hamas's massacre on the 7th and by subsequent daily rockets fired by Hezbollah in Lebanon from the 8th of October. The IDF says it targets terrorist targets, gives warnings to civilians before any counter-offensive. And at the same time as the US is reportedly investigating Israeli actions, White House spokesperson John Kirby has said that he's praised IDF efforts to protect civilians, saying that Israel sometimes takes actions that he's not sure even the US military would take in terms of informing civilians ahead of operations where to go and where not to go. Now, in terms of white phosphorus, international law allows for white phosphorus in some circumstances, and in previous comments the IDF have made, they've said they only use legal weaponry, that the use of white phosphorus is influenced by the operation and availability of alternatives, and they use it only for smoke screens, not to attack.